Have you ever felt that deep, unsettling doubt, the quiet whisper in your mind saying, something isn't right? That's not paranoia. It's psychology at work. And if you've ever questioned someone's loyalty, this message is for you. Today, we're diving into 8 powerful psychological insights that can help you uncover the truth, while also rebuilding your confidence, self-worth, and emotional clarity along the way. But first, pause for a second. Have you ever brushed off red flags because facing the truth felt too painful? If that hits home, drop a yes in the comments. Your honesty could help someone else who's silently struggling. Now picture this. You're sitting alone in a quiet room. The world's still around you, but something inside refuses to settle. It's not a thought you can clearly define, not even a suspicion you can explain. It's a feeling, a tightness in your chest, a heaviness in your stomach, a subtle pull in your intuition, whispering something isn't right. That whisper, your gut instinct, isn't irrational. It's an ancient, finely tuned survival mechanism, shaped by thousands of years of evolution to alert you when your emotional safety is in danger. But here's the heartbreaking truth. So many women silence that inner instinct, not because they lack intuition, but because they've been conditioned to distrust it. Through narcissistic relationships, manipulative partners, and even cultural messaging, they've learned to second-guess themselves. That's how gaslighting takes hold. A man lies, minimizes, twists reality, and before she knows it, the confident, self-assured woman who once trusted her own perception is now apologizing for seeing things clearly. Think about it. How many times have you whispered to yourself, maybe I'm overreacting, maybe I'm being too sensitive? That voice isn't your intuition, it's the internalized echo of every time someone dismissed your emotions, labeled your feelings as too much, or made you believe your emotional depth was a flaw. And once that doubt takes root, it silences the very part of you designed to keep you safe. Psychology tells us that when attachment becomes insecure, when you've experienced abandonment, neglect, or betrayal, you're more likely to override your instincts in the desperate hope of preserving connection. You start tolerating inconsistencies, rationalizing red flags, because the fear of losing love feels more unbearable than the pain of being deceived. But here's the paradox. When you dismiss your own perceptions and silence your intuition, you disconnect from your feminine essence, the core of your inner power. That intuitive radar isn't just a survival mechanism, it's your deepest source of strength and wisdom. And here's the unsettling truth. The cheater, whether consciously or not, recognizes this. Gaslighting succeeds because it erodes your confidence, makes you question your own reality, and leaves you relying on them to define what's true. That's not love. That's psychological control. Picture this. A woman, vibrant and full of life, begins to sense subtle changes. Her partner starts placing his phone face down. His answers become vague. Work obligations start stretching late into the night. She feels that instinctive pang of unease, but when she speaks up, he laughs, dismisses her, calls her crazy. And slowly, she stops asking questions. She stops trusting herself. And in that quiet surrender, something far more painful happens. She becomes disconnected from her own inner compass. This goes beyond infidelity. It's about trauma, about the slow erosion of self-worth, about a woman forgetting how to trust her own truth. Now pause and really consider this. Why does it matter so deeply? Because when you stop trusting your intuition, you lose your sense of direction. You can't tell who to believe in or yourself. And that confusion is exactly where betrayal grows. A woman who is grounded in her intuition, attuned to her body's subtle cues, can sense deceit before it's spoken. She doesn't just see the truth, she feels it. A woman who has lost connection with herself will accept almost any explanation just to avoid conflict. That's why the first step in uncovering betrayal isn't about scrutinizing his actions. It's about reclaiming your inner authority. It's about coming home to that quiet, embodied wisdom that speaks beneath all the mental noise. But here's the paradox. The moment you begin to trust that inner voice again, life doesn't instantly get easier, it often gets harder. Because now, you must face the truth your body's been trying to tell you all along. And sometimes that truth is excruciating, to realize that the person who was supposed to cherish your heart has become the one who breaks it. This is the crucible of feminine awakening. Will you choose silence or clarity? Will you cling to illusion, or will you honor your truth? The decision is yours, but remember, the cost of denying your intuition will always be greater than the pain of facing it. And that realization leads us deeper into the subtle energetic shifts that often foreshadow betrayal itself. Love has a rhythm. Every relationship moves through an unseen exchange of emotional energy, a current flowing back and forth like the ocean's tide. When two souls are in harmony, that rhythm feels steady, safe, and sustaining. But when deceit enters the picture, that rhythm begins to falter. The tide pulls away, and suddenly you're standing on a quiet shore that feels hauntingly empty. You find yourself wondering, why does it feel like they're here, but not really here? That feeling isn't your imagination, it's your intuition recognizing the change before your mind can name it. That is the quiet physics of intimacy, the slow withdrawal of emotional energy that begins long before any act of physical betrayal. And yet, how often do women sense this shift and choose to ignore it? He stops asking about your day. His touch grows distant. Conversations turn hollow, scripted, stripped of warmth. The connection that once felt alive now flickers like a fading flame. You feel it in your bones, but instead of calling it what it is, you compensate. You give more affection, more effort, more of your heart, believing you can restore the balance through love alone. But here's the truth. This imbalance isn't random. It's not just a bad week or a passing mood. It's a sign, a psychological signal that attention and emotional energy are being redirected. Energy isn't limitless. When it's no longer flowing toward you, it's often being invested somewhere else. And here lies the cruel irony. When someone withdraws, your first instinct is to turn inward, to blame yourself. You start to wonder, am I less attractive, less interesting? Did I do something wrong? But that self-doubt blinds you to the truth. Their distance reveals their integrity, not your inadequacy. In narcissistic dynamics, this is exactly the trap. They want you to internalize the blame. They manipulate your empathy, turning your loyalty into a weapon against you. Instead of confronting their betrayal, you start confronting yourself. Now, imagine this from a new angle. You're sitting across the table from your partner. Once, his eyes would light up when you spoke. Every word you said seemed to draw him closer. Now, he drifts. Once, he lingered in the moment with you, present, engaged, connected. Now, his attention slips away. He reaches for his phone. His eyes dart elsewhere. His energy feels miles away. That loss of presence may seem subtle, but it's not. It's seismic, because presence is the true currency of love. Without it, intimacy fades, safety erodes, and trust begins to crack. Still, you stay quiet, because to confront it feels like opening Pandora's box. Yet this is where healing truly begins, in naming what you feel, in refusing to pretend that the growing coldness is just coincidence. Feminine energy, when anchored in self-worth, doesn't chase, plead, or shrink itself to earn attention. It sees the withdrawal for what it is and speaks truth without apology. This doesn't bring instant closure or clarity. What it does bring is integrity, the refusal to gaslight yourself or mistake distance for randomness. Because emotional withdrawal is rarely accidental. It's often the first smoke before the fire. And here's the haunting. Sometimes the withdrawal hurts even more than the betrayal itself. Because in that quiet, aching space where love used to live, you start to lose yourself. You begin to walk on eggshells, overcompensate, perform trying to win back what was never yours to earn in the first place. That's why the true healing isn't just about exposing the cheater. It's about reclaiming your energy, your presence, your worth. But here's the tension I want you to feel. What do you do when the person you love most starts disappearing right before your eyes? Physically there, but emotionally gone. How do you hold that ache, that gnawing question that hangs in the air? Do you confront or retreat? Do you trust your intuition or bury it beneath the illusion of peace. That's the edge where the story of betrayal begins. Picture this. A phone lies face down on the table, buzzing softly. Across from you, your partner shifts, smiles at your story, maybe even laughs, but their eyes flicker, just for a moment, toward that glowing screen. And in that split second, something in your body tightens. You feel it before you understand it. You tell yourself not to overthink it. But later, when he guards that phone, like it holds state secrets, a quiet knowing stirs inside you. What's he hiding? Phones today aren't just tools. They're vaults of intimacy, holding the digital footprints of our private selves. So when someone conceals their digital world from their partner, it's not just secrecy, it's the quiet construction of a wall within the relationship. Here's the trap. A self-aware, high-value woman feels that wall. She senses the subtle shift in emotional closeness, the fading transparency that once made her feel secure. But instead of trusting that intuitive awareness, she often questions it. Why? Because she's been conditioned through subtle narcissistic dynamics to distrust her own perception. He'll deflect with lines like, "You're too controlling," or "Don't you trust me?" as if her longing for honesty is the problem, not his lack of it. This is psychological projection in action. By accusing her of mistrust, he diverts attention from his own concealment. The phone becomes more than just a device, it becomes a symbol. Every flip screen, every deleted message, every late night notification is a small wound, a signal that her emotional safety is slowly being compromised. And here's the painful paradox. The more secrecy grows, the more she hungers for clarity. She becomes hypervigilant, scanning for clues, reading energy shifts, analyzing tone, all in an attempt to restore equilibrium. This isn't obsession or paranoia. It's her nervous system trying to reconcile contradiction. It's trauma response in motion. Picture this. You reach for his phone not to snoop, just out of habit. And suddenly, his reaction is explosive, defensive, wildly out of proportion. That outburst isn't about privacy. It's about exposure. Innocence doesn't fear transparency. Deception does. And deep down, you already know that. But fear keeps you silent because confronting him could shatter the illusion you've been clinging to. And sometimes maintaining that illusion feels safer than facing the truth. But pause and ask yourself this. What kind of love demands your silence? Asks you to doubt your intuition and forces you to live in constant uncertainty? That's not love. That's control, disguised as connection. That is not love. That is psychological imprisonment. And in those moments when your self-worth feels most fragile, you must remember the quiet, unwavering strength of feminine energy. Feminine energy doesn't plead for honesty or chase after scraps of affection. It stands firm in truth, knowing that transparency is the foundation of real intimacy. Without it, there is no relationship, only performance, only shadows. But here's the deeper truth. Secrecy is never random. It follows a pattern. The partner who once left his phone casually on the counter now keeps it locked away like a sacred relic. Passwords change without explanation. Notifications disappear before your eyes. These aren't coincidences. They're deliberate signs of concealment. And once you learn to see these patterns, you can't unsee them. Which brings you to a painful question. How long are you willing to live in the shadow of someone else's deception? Here's where the story turns inward, because secrecy doesn't only destroy trust between two people, it erodes the trust you have in yourself. You begin to doubt not only him, but your own intuition, your own perception, your own sanity, and that more than the betrayal itself is the deepest wound of all. This takes us into the realm of attachment styles, the invisible blueprints that shape how we love, how we avoid, and how we betray. Think of love as a mirror. Every relationship reflects not only your partner's patterns, but your attachment style, your fears, your unhealed wounds. Here's the unsettling reality. Infidelity is rarely random. It often emerges from those buried emotional imprints that govern how people connect or retreat. Imagine someone with an avoidant attachment style. Their greatest fear is being trapped, suffocated by emotional closeness. When guilt or betrayal begins to surface, they don't confess. They withdraw. They become distant, evasive, emotionally numb. Conversations that once felt alive now dissolve into silence. And for the partner left behind, that silence feels like abandonment. But instead of recognizing the pattern, she blames herself, believing that if she were just more lovable, more patient, more understanding, the distance would disappear. Now picture the anxious attachment style. For them, betrayal doesn't cause retreat, it triggers overcompensation. They may suddenly overwhelm you with affection, lavish gestures, passionate words, sudden devotion. But beneath the surface, that surge of affection isn't genuine intimacy, it's disguise. It's the guilty child offering flowers after breaking the vase. On the outside, it looks like rekindled love. On the inside, it's fear. Fear of being found out, fear of losing control. And here's the painful truth for so many women. These patterns are often mistaken for love. The avoidant silence becomes a challenge to win over. The anxious partner's intensity feels like renewed passion, but in reality, both are psychological defenses. Instinctive reactions born not of love, but of fear. Once you learn to see this clearly, you can never unsee it. Think of it this way. Attachment styles are the hidden scripts running beneath the play. You can change the scenery, the costumes, even the cast, but if the script stays the same, the ending never changes. A woman rooted in self-worth understands this. She doesn't get lost in the performance. She studies the script. She reads the silence, the overcompensation, the push and pull of avoidance and anxiety. She recognizes it for what it truly is, a mirror reflecting unhealed wounds. But let's be honest, awareness doesn't make it easier, because once you realize your partner's unresolved attachment wounds are steering the relationship, a devastating truth emerges. You cannot heal what they refuse to face. You cannot become the therapist for someone still committed to their own denial. And so the question shifts. It's no longer why are they withdrawing or why are they suddenly overcompensating? The more important question is, why am I tolerating a love that doesn't feel safe? And here the story circles back to you. Attachment patterns don't just reveal the betrayer, they reveal the betrayed. If you grew up in chaos, neglect, or under the shadow of broken promises, you may find yourself clinging when someone pulls away, mistaking instability for intensity. This isn't weakness, it's an unhealed wound. But until you acknowledge it, until you honor the part of you still craving repair, you remain susceptible to the same cycles repeating. So pay attention. When someone withdraws in moments of intimacy, or only showers affection when guilt threatens exposure, ask yourself, whose script is this? Theirs alone or mine too? Hidden within these attachment patterns lies not only the story of betrayal, but also the potential for transformation if you choose to read the script instead of acting blindly within it. Yet, recognition doesn't erase the pain. If anything, it sharpens it. Suddenly, the patterns you once mistook for love are clear, and clarity demands action. Which brings us to the next challenge. If their words shift, if their story fractures under the weight of inconsistency, how do you separate truth from the web of lies? Imagine asking a simple, innocent question. Where were you last night? Not as an accusation, but as a quiet request for reassurance. He answers smoothly, almost too smoothly, and for a moment, you want to believe him. A week later, the question resurfaces. Not planned, just remembered. And this time, his answer changes slightly. A different detail here, a shifted sequence there. Now, subtle enough that you almost doubt yourself. Yet deep in your body, something registers the fracture. Truth is consistent. Lies shimmer and distort like a mirage in the desert. The human mind is not designed for deceit. Sustaining a lie takes enormous energy, mental rehearsal, constant vigilance, patching over cracks. Eventually, the weight of deception leaks through. The pause before an answer, the darting eyes, the nervous laugh, the deflection, the turning of the question back onto you. These aren't random behaviors, they're microsignals, psychological triggers, revealing a story that doesn't hold. And here is where so many women stumble. Instead of trusting these signals, they doubt themselves. maybe I forgot, maybe I misunderstood. That doubt is exactly where narcissistic dynamics thrive. Because when you confront a contradiction, a dishonest partner rarely admits it. They twist the story, accuse you of being controlling, suspicious, or dramatic. Suddenly, you're not questioning their loyalty. You're defending your own sanity. This isn't accidental, it's a calculated strategy. Its purpose is to keep you trapped in confusion, to silence the instinct that's been screaming inside you. Consider the cost. Every time you override your awareness, every time you ignore the proof your senses deliver, you fracture your relationship with yourself. And that fracture is far more devastating than the betrayal itself. Because what is self-worth if not the trust in your own perception of reality? A high-value woman does not abandon that inner compass. She notices the inconsistencies, not with paranoia, but with clarity. She understands that love thrives on truth, and that dishonesty, no matter how cleverly disguised, is a slow poison seeping through the veins of a relationship. Picture it this way. Walking through a forest, the path splits in two. One trail is firm, grounded, trustworthy. The other shifts beneath your feet, unstable and uncertain. Which do you choose? The path that holds you, or the one that collapses under you? This is what it feels like to live with lies. Your body knows the ground is unstable, yet fear keeps you moving, and with every step, you lose pieces of yourself. The question is not only whether he is lying. The deeper question is, why? Are you willing to live in a story that doesn't add up? What wound keeps you clinging to fantasy instead of honoring the fracture? Once you recognize the inconsistency, you can never unknow it. And that realization leads to another brutal truth. Those who lie rarely include you in their future. When the future disappears, the ache is subtle but persistent. The vacations you once planned together, the little dreams of homes, holidays, growing old side by side, they vanish from conversation. Silence replaces possibility. That silence is never random. When someone stops investing in tomorrow with you, it usually means their energy is flowing elsewhere. Love is not just measured in moments, it is revealed in the willingness to imagine a shared future. When that willingness vanishes, it's not forgetfulness, it's emotional withdrawal. The person who is betraying you often stops weaving you into their vision, not because they cannot see a future, but because they are weaving it somewhere else. Here's the painful twist. When the future disappears, many women double down on the present. They cook the meals, pour in affection, try harder to spark connection. If I just remind him of what we have, maybe he'll remember, they think. This is feminine energy, misdirected, poured into a vessel already cracked. In the process, even a high-value woman can lose sight of her own worth. She bargains for scraps of attention, mistakes silence for stability, absence for patience. Picture this, sitting across from him at dinner. Once, the conversation flowed toward tomorrow vacations, goals, little promises. Now it circles endlessly around trivialities. The moment you bring up next month or next year, he shifts, deflects, changes the subject. That resistance is not innocent, it's a wall, a refusal to include you in the architecture of his life. And walls, when tall enough, turn partners into strangers under the same roof. Yet how many times do we tell ourselves, maybe he's just stressed, maybe it's a busy season. We make excuses because facing the truth is terrifying. To admit that, if you've been erased from the future, is to admit that the bond is already fractured, and that truth shakes the foundation of your life. So instead, you linger in the present, hoping it will somehow fill the void of tomorrow. But it never does. Because presence without a shared future isn't love, it's convenience. Here's the deeper psychological truth. When a partner stops envisioning a future with you, they're signaling that you no longer anchor their sense of direction. And for a woman who craves emotional safety, that realization is profoundly destabilizing. It awakens old wounds, the fear of abandonment, the terror of being left behind.